So on behalf of the Police Foundation, 30 by 30 and Mark 43, welcome and thank you for joining us today. The Police Foundation is proud to be a 30 by 30 partner. Our organization has been around for 50 years, and throughout that 50 years of history, we've conducted a lot of research on women in policing, ways to integrate them into police departments, and really quantifying their value in the field, with the community, within departments. I encourage everybody here, if you've not gone to our website at policefoundation.org, to go there, look for our history page. There's an entire section on research that we've done on women in policing. So that's an exciting foundation for the work of 30 by 30, and looking forward to this group building on it. I want to thank our panelists today, Commissioner Danielle Outlaw, Deputy Commissioner Cherie Briscoe, and Commissioner Michael Harrison for joining us. We know this is going to be an exciting panel and discussion today. And of course, our facilitator, Ganesha Martin. Thank you for all the work that you've put into this today. And with that, I will hand it back over to you, Ganesha, and look forward to the discussion.
Awesome. So before I kick it off, Mo is going to give us just a little bit of brief overview of 30 by 30.
Great. Thank you so much, Ganesha, and thank you, Jen. I'm Mo McGough. I'm the Chief of Staff at the Policing Project and one of the co-founders of the 30 by 30 initiative. And just looking at the list, I think I'll keep my part brief because I think we've got a lot of folks from participating agencies on who are pretty familiar, but just in case, here's just a brief overview of how we got here and where we're going. So back in 2018, I was a senior policy advisor with the U.S. Department of Justice, and I was working with state and local law enforcement on evidence-based policing initiatives. And I was working really closely with a Ben captain from the Newark Police Department, Captain Yvonne Roman. And she approached me and basically said, you know, the Department of Justice says it cares about research and it cares about data, but there's all of this evidence out there about the unique value of women officers, yet they make up 12% of law enforcement officers in this country. And that number's been stagnant for decades and no one's doing anything about it. And it was a shock to hear those numbers, and it was a point very well taken. So in December of 2018, Captain Roman and I joined forces to lead a national summit on women in policing. And we brought together over 100 women from chiefs and commissioners of major metro departments to line officers. We also had some policymakers and researchers in there as well. And basically what we wanted to understand is, what is the state of the research? What does the evidence suggest is important for us to address? And why are these numbers as stagnant as they are? If you're interested in getting sort of an overview of these types of issues, the report out from that summit is a pretty good resource for you, Breaking Barriers and Blazing a Path, and I'll drop it in the chat in just a second. We didn't know it at the time, but that summit was actually the start of the 30 by 30 initiative. We've since grown into this coalition across a host of different organizations, agencies, and we're basically just a group of women, most of whom are working pro bono because we deeply care about the work and believe in its importance. And our goal for the 30 by 30 initiative is twofold. So first is to see that women represent 30% of police recruit classes by the year 2030. And second, and equally, if not more important, is to ensure that policing agencies are environments where women and other underrepresented officers are not just surviving, but thriving. And our very first effort of this initiative, we actually launched in March of this year. We're thrilled to say it's the 30 by 30 pledge. And the pledge is very simple. It's a series of no and low cost actions that policing agencies can start doing today to improve both the representation and experiences of women across all ranks of their department. I am thrilled to say that as of this morning, we have 102 agencies who are participating in this pledge. We have everything from NYPD to university PDs to sort of small and rural departments and everything in between. And we're looking forward to recruiting our next 100 to join us in these efforts. Participating agencies, if you're considering joining, you would be part of this sort of community of practice working to advance women in policing. You would have access to monthly webinars like the one that you're attending today. You'll have a newsletter that goes out monthly as well with all of these different resources and connections to other types of support as you achieve your pledge actions. And just so you know, we're also actively fundraising to be able to provide much more rigorous technical assistance to the agencies who are participating in the pledge. If you'd like to learn more, I highly suggest you head to our website. It's www.30by30initiative.org. I'll also drop that in the chat, and you can follow us on Twitter at 30by30initiative. All right, so I'm going to turn it back to Ganesha, but first I have the distinct pleasure of actually introducing Ganesha, and I actually had to reach out because Ganesha has done so much that I needed guidance about what to actually highlight, lest we take up the vast majority of the webinar just talking about what Ganesha has done for the field of policing. So she's a police reform expert, that goes without saying, current Vice President of Public Policy and Community Affairs at Mark 43. And in her role, she focuses on Mark 43's ongoing commitment to innovation in technology designed to empower police and other public safety professionals to better serve their communities through accountability, transparency, and trust building. So prior to Mark 43, Ganesha served in several positions in the Baltimore city government, most recently as the director of the Mayor's Office of Criminal Justice. She's overseen collaborative criminal justice efforts that included the Baltimore Police Department, Baltimore State Attorney's Office, Governor's Office of Crime Control and Prevention, DOJ Civil Rights, U.S. Attorney's Office, Judiciary, community groups, you name it. I, for one, am extremely grateful for Ganesha. She's been one of the foundational partners from 30 by 30 for the very beginning. And I mentioned this before, this really is just a grassroots effort of people who came together because we really care about the issues, but there's no playbook, there's barely any funding. And Ganesha has been an absolute rock, an indefatigable force in making sure that we drive forward because there really is no other choice. She's a really great blend of both a realist and an optimist, and I think you'll hear that from her in her remarks today. It's part of why she's so adept at really sort of bridging the gap between police and communities they serve and ensuring everyone's sort of reoriented towards a shared mission of equitable public safety for all. So Ganesha, thank you so much for all of your work and your partnership, and take it away.
Wow. Thanks, Mo. I'll cash app you for that wonderful introduction later. So I can't tell you just how much of a pleasure it is for me to moderate this panel today. This is like all of my worlds colliding here with, the commissioner who I worked with, in the Concentric Creek work when he was in New Orleans. And I'm gonna go through the bios. I'm sure our panelists don't need an introduction, but I'm gonna do that. My birthday twin, Chief Outlaw, and so many other things. You'll hear about all the wonderful things she's done, forging pathways. And then I call her my baby, and she's not my baby, but Deputy Commissioner Briscoe, who I have been able to have the pleasure of seeing rise through the ranks and do so many good things for police and community in Baltimore City in very tumultuous and challenging times. So I wanted to throw that out there because I hate to read, but I am going to read parts of their bio because I think it's important for you to understand who we have on our panel today. So I'm going to start with Chief Danielle Outlaw, who is currently the chief of the Philadelphia Police Department. She became commissioner for the Philadelphia Police Department on February 10th, 2020. She previously served as chief of police for the Portland Police Bureau in Oregon. She was the first African-American woman to head the Bureau in Portland and was appointed to that role in 2017. Prior to Portland, she worked for the Oakland Police Department, where she served as deputy chief from 2013 to 2017. Outlaw has been part of communities such as the San Francisco Bay Area National Organization of Black Law Enforcement Executives and International Association Chiefs of Police Human and Civil Rights Committee. Both of these organizations aim to implement diversity in the police force. These groups heavily influenced Outlaw's principles in policing. Outlaw has been known to support demographic diversity and diversity of thought in all of her bureaus and all of her assignments. Next up, we have Commissioner Michael Harrison. I'm so glad that you could join us. I know you were at a press conference, which they're a press conference a minute in Baltimore. So I'm glad that you could join us. He is serving right now as Baltimore Police Commissioner since March 2019. Previously served in the New Orleans Police Department for 28 years and was appointed to serve as its superintendent in 2014. He has considerable experience in navigating these two cities, police agencies, while operating under federal consent decree and dealing with violent crime. He served as president of the Police Executive Research Forum Board of Directors since 2019 and past board member of the Major City Chiefs Association. He has extensive external professional development, graduated from the Senior Management Institute for Police, Northwestern University School of Police Staff, and command at the FBI National Executive Institute. A firm believer in civic duty, served 8 years with the Louisiana Air National Guard, and 2010 was ordained as a minister at City of Love Church in New Orleans. He's the best at intertwining operational information with a Bible verse. Maybe you'll throw some to us today. Commissioner Harrison has been married to his high school sweetheart since 1992, a boss of a woman, and has 2 adult children. And whoever wrote this bio needs to add in that new grandbaby that you have. Next, but certainly not least, Deputy Commissioner Cherie Briscoe, first African-American woman promoted to Deputy Commissioner, which was announced March 31st, 2021, effective June 1, 2021. She will oversee the department's day-to-day operations and have oversight of thousands of officers and head the department's Operation Bureau. She's a 26-year veteran and served as chief of the Criminal Investigation Division prior to promotion. Prior to investigations, Briscoe was a lieutenant colonel over the Neighborhood Services section of the Patrol Division, where she was responsible for leading BPD's community engagement efforts, neighborhood coordination office, NCO program, crisis intervention team. DC Briscoe is regarded for her leadership and care for the people of Baltimore, absolutely, especially during her oversight of patrol and criminal investigation units. She started her career in the Western District and later became the major overseeing that district. According to Commissioner Harrison, Briscoe asked to be reassigned to the Western District after the 2015 unrest following the death of Freddie Gray, and she led with distinction and heart. Anybody and everybody will tell you that. In 2016, Briscoe was featured as a community change maker by regional news outlet. In that interview, she shared that uplifting community is one of the original reasons she wanted to become a police officer. Graduate of FBI National Academy, and a mother of 4 adult children, also a grandmother, and I think we're still a newlywed. I'm gonna say you are. So again, so happy, if you guys cannot tell, for me to have this powerful group of people on the phone, not only because of their storied and great careers rising through the ranks, but these people lead with heart and mind. And so let's jump into it. So I'm going to show you a clip. Not everybody has been able to see the film, and so I want to set the stage for those of you who have not been able to. I will tell you, every time I watch this trailer, I am triggered. You may be triggered as well. So I just want to give you that little bit there. So we will play the trailer, and then we'll come back for the conversation. Dominique? Dominique, I can't hear. Can other people hear it?
Nope, no sound, Dominique.
We cannot hear.
You can't hear it? I can start over and try to see if that works. Give me one moment.
They killed that boy in cold blood. Why can't we blood? Why can't we blood?
That was the first real time that I felt like I needed to choose a side, black or blue.
People want change. They want it quickly, but change is very challenging.
Do you, Janae Harteau, solemnly swear?
My goal as the police chief was creating change from within. And now every rank of this police department is held by a woman or women.
The 3rd precinct was a place that needed culture change.
Officer-involved shootings almost always include male officers, very seldom with women.
Let's introduce Officer Wade.
Morning.
It's how you interact with the person. Are we treating them with proper respect as human beings?
De-escalation has a point, but at some point, you got to take action.
It's not about white. It's not about black. It's about the police keep killing us. I'm calling for Chief Harteau to be fired.
Madaria Arredondo is the city's first Black police chief.
In Minneapolis, the chief has selected no women for his executive team. They're losing any female perspective.
Do you have a valid driver's license?
I don't.
So that's why you're nervous.
Yeah.
I know that fear. I don't want to add to the trauma.
It looks like we're a bunch of incompetents running around willingly violating people's rights.
The Hennepin County Attorney's Office has filed charges of third-degree murder against Minneapolis police officer Mohammed Noor.
Black officer getting charged with shooting a white woman. And so many white officers have not been charged with shooting people of color.
Justice for one is not justice for all. Do something about it.
Do you feel embarrassed sometimes of my job? I'm supporting Black Lives Matter, but it's like, I support my mom.
Thank you, Dominique. And just to give you guys a little bit of context, and we are lucky enough to have the producer, Deidre Official, here. I saw her face somewhere on today. So we thank you, Deidre, for being here and for making this film. And just a little bit of context on the film. Deidre is a filmmaker in New York. When the Eric Garner incident occurred, she happened to be standing or near a friend of hers who was a female police officer, and she made the remark she would have handled it differently. And so that made Deidre kind of start thinking about looking into these issues. And so she kind of went down this road. I was lucky enough to get the access that she did for this film. And so, as you know, as you can see, just in that clip, it explores and hits on so many different issues in policing. It hits on race, gender, use of force, police-involved shootings, culture, the change that everybody wants yesterday, understanding trauma and not wanting to cause more of it, firing the chief as a solution to fix everything that ails a city, including all of its historic issues. And so not only is race and gender an issue that's difficult to talk about in America, it's particularly difficult to talk about and very touchy in policing. And we only really face these issues in policing when we're forced, as we were in 2015 and as we were this past summer, or a special police leader comes along who confronts it head on and understands really how to engage with both sides, quote unquote. Increasingly, whether you want to or not, you have to face this if you are part of policing, especially if you are in a leadership position. So let's talk to these leaders that we have on the call today and take me through, first of all, if there's any initial reactions you want to share with us, from the film or from that clip, please certainly do that. But my first question is to take me through your career and the evolution of race and gender, because you all have seen it change over time. How did it confront you in your professional career? How did the leadership that you were under at the time respond to it, and how are you dealing with it in this critical moment? Chief Outlaw, I'll come to you first.
Good afternoon. It's good to see everybody. Thank you for having me. It's an honor to be a part of this esteemed panel, but really to talk about the things that's been an elephant in the room for so long. This is a full day conversation. It's more than a full day, quite honestly, especially when you sum up all of our careers, multiply the years that we've all been doing this, and then all of our lived experiences that have now shaped our perspectives, that now shape our visions in our respective departments. We can spend all day talking about this. I'm a first here in Philadelphia. I was a first in Portland. I was as a deputy chief in Oakland, I think I was the second female deputy chief, happened to be second Black female, but the first of this century, right? So the fact that we're still talking about first in today's day and age is really sad, because there's been so many of us working from behind the curtain for a very long time. And I think it's an opportunity or a seat at the table. With that said, it wasn't really until I began, hitting the ranks at the executive level, but not even so much as a deputy chief, but as a police chief. One of the first things I was asked in Portland was, how's it feel to be, right? How's it feel to be the first African-American woman, blah, 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 blah. Or I forgot how I was definitely asked that here, but I forgot how they phrased it in Portland. And I caught myself. It was, during the presser when they were announcing me, and I caught myself and I said, well, I happen to be the police chief, but I was born this way. And I was hired because I'm qualified, in fact, overqualified to do this work. And then standing behind me, you can hear a pin drop in the room because they led with that question. And it was a woman who asked me this, right? And so then I get here, I'm asked the exact same thing. And I told them flat out, I've been a Black woman, a Black female my entire life. This is the profession that I chose. I just happen to be this. So I don't know if it's because, again, it's that I'm a first and it's garnering so much attention. Or it's because we are now talking about race, gender, policing, and then hopefully the intersectionality of class as well, right? So I remember when I first started, I didn't know what a microaggression was. There was no diversity and inclusion, or there was no equity. We weren't talking about intent versus impact. There was no training around any of this stuff. I just knew that I was feeling uncomfortable in some situations, and I had to find my own allies. We weren't calling them allies, right? But I knew I had to do something. And I knew that, the biases were there. And I knew that the discrimination was there, but I didn't know what to call it. And I think a lot of us kind of coined or came up with some ways to cope, not just tolerate, but to work through and continue on, right? Not to say, well, I'm not for this anymore, I'm done, right? And so that's why we're here today. So I don't know how the conversations came about, but I've always, and I'm very careful about when I use always and never, but I've always led from my personal experience, led from my lived experience, whether as a Black woman or as a mother of two sons that are now 23 and 20, or my experiences as a young person with my interactions with police. And I know that I didn't always like the police. I know that I wasn't always comfortable with police, but I've always been comfortable enough in my skin to say that. It's just now okay for us to even have a venue and a space like this to talk about it. I mean, hands off for there to even be, we're talking movies and, to talk about our experiences. I remember officers getting shunned not that long ago for saying I'm Black and I don't agree with what happened to Eric Garner.
Right.
To publicly say that. And then our colleagues who we were, basically would take a bullet for because that close would be like, how dare you say that? And then we're looking back like, well, what do you mean? Don't you care about me as a human being? These are my experiences. So it's been there for so long and we've all had to find ways to navigate through. But I appreciate now that we're more willing to acknowledge that there's a there there. And we're all made to feel a certain way. And because of all of the different lived experiences that we have and the perspectives that we bring to the table, we might have a little bit more, something more unique to offer.
I agree with you so much. And even getting prepared for this conversation, I shared with the DC and the commissioner, it took a lot of thinking just around policing and these issues and all the things that come up in the film, which is why I mentioned triggers. The triggers, come from all different places. But I realized it's not only us getting the language to describe what it is we're feeling and we're seeing, but also people having to get used to hearing it and then being able to have this conversation so we can figure out where we're going next and not stay stuck in this moment. Commissioner, I'm going to come over to you, Commissioner Harrison, and ask you, your thoughts, any initial thoughts that you had just in watching the trailer and/or, how race has come to play a part throughout your ascension in the ranks and how you're dealing with the issues of race and gender as the commissioner in Baltimore.
Yeah, first of all, thank you for having me on. I'm happy to see all of you and to be part of this with all of you and my good dear friend and colleague who's 2 hours away doing a good job up in Philadelphia. It's always good to see you. Look, my experiences were different than Commissioner Outlaw's. Race didn't necessarily, because I joined New Orleans Police Department in 1991, very diverse police department. And it wasn't a matter of in the way I saw it or the way I was treated, most things weren't racial issues. They were just right and wrong issues. And I found that when race came into play, it was while we had a Black superintendent and we had Black leaders at the executive level, I found it very difficult to matriculate through different assignments. And I found that I had to compete harder and be smarter and better and, put myself through school so that, my resume would shine above everyone else's because you had to be better, you had to be smarter, and you had to do a better job just to get noticed, to be selected, because there was so much cronyism and favoritism and nepotism of people who knew people and who were related to other people. It was very generational department. Sons and grandsons and great grandsons and uncles and nephews were all on the department, and I didn't have any relatives on the department or any friends. So I had to really push to do a good job while going to school, while raising a family, all at the same time. And those things worked for me inevitably. I was able to promote up through the ranks, but I spent 9 years in internal affairs. And where race came into play there, it was, I'm investigating allegations against other police officers. Right is right, wrong is wrong. For me, it's that black and white, but it becomes who's getting rewarded, who's getting punished. And then my eyes began to be open that for a lot of our Black officers were being punished for very minor things and really punished for serious things, while our counterparts weren't being punished at all, but in many cases were being rewarded, which led to a culture that brought us into a consent decree. And then I became the police superintendent in 2014 in the second year of that consent decree. So while race wasn't always a deciding factor on the beginning of things, as I grew and matriculated up through the department, I could clearly see how race played a part in hiring, selection, promotion, assignment, all of those things. And now that I'm here in Baltimore, it's a very diverse department here too, but race still plays a big part in a lot of the decisions that get made, and they get made for the very wrong reason. I found it very telling. That the officer had to have a conflict between being Black and being blue. I find myself having the same conflicts, and most of us do. When we see these negative national things that are happening to people in the community at the hands of police, and there's disparate treatment between Black officers who commit those things and maybe white officers who commit the same act or the same violation. And it becomes important for people who are leaders or want to be leaders to have the courage and the thick skin to speak up about that. But agencies have to design discipline and design reporting mechanisms and design anti-retaliation policies that protect people who are willing to do the right thing and to step up. And we're just getting to that point where agencies are doing that to protect their own employees who are willing to do that. That's why so many people don't do it, because they're on an island when they do.
Yep. Yeah, I agree. And I'm not going to get on my soapbox, but I always say it's fine to have a duty to intervene policy. But if you don't talk about it, and if you don't let folks know that when they actually do intervene, you're going to have their back, then that policy is not worth the paper that it's on. So I am glad to start to see more departments kind of moving towards that way. And DC, I'm going to come to you and talk to us about how you have been at the Baltimore Police Department and seen it in a lot of different ways. And in a lot of different stages of its life. Talk to us about how race and gender have played a part in your ascension up the ranks, and how you have to deal with it as a leader.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for this opportunity to be here. It is truly my honor and my privilege, and this absolutely irony to follow up behind Commissioner Outlaw and Commissioner Harris. And I've been in the Baltimore Police Department since 1994. When I joined, my first encounter where gender and race were brought to my face in a way that I didn't expect after such a robust push to have women join the agency. That was a huge era of time when Baltimore was acknowledging its lack of women and they were out actively recruiting. I was at Morgan State University at the time and I joined the team. Joined the academy process and I joined, I was already a mother. My 4 children were already in this world. And one of the first academy instructors was like, I'm going to help you get to where you need to be. And that's home raising your 4 children. That was my introduction to dealing with race and class, gender upon entry. And it was really the support of other women at the academy that said, we will help you with running, because my issue was physical fitness. My youngest child at the time when I joined was 6 months old. And it was the physical fitness that I was struggling with. So to have that be my introduction to the organization that ultimately I would spend now 27 years serving in, if that was my lens in 1994, what else was going on that I didn't yet know about? And when I joined, graduated the academy and got assigned to my first district, which was the Western, the district commander was an African-American male. And that was another place that gender was the conversation. And he had his own challenges and was very derogatory, misogynistic toward the females that were on the team. So I've spent my entire career showing up in spaces and places where, as a woman, we were not always welcomed. And though we still flag these firsts, it does not come without challenge. Being the first in 2021 says that there is still room for improvement. Though I am honored and grateful to be in the role, it is an earned role because there is sometimes this tagline now when you look around the country and there are women showing up in places as if these are seats just being handed out, when these are seats that we are earning. We're working hard and twice as hard, 3 times as long, proving ourselves through education, through opportunity, through adversity, that we have earned our seat at the table, and not just at the table, but a voice in the room for change, for policy, for so many things that need to happen to make room. And not just for women, but for all voices that need to represent public safety and policing and community, especially women, especially when you're looking at the statistics that we have less use of force, that we bring an element to the room that's needed, that we represent so much more than just our gender and our race. So to still be having the conversation in 2021 about first, as Commissioner Outlaw stated, is a sad commentary. Though I'm honored to be here, it is an earned seat that I sit in. And I am not confused. I'm often having conversations with Commissioner Harrison where I'm dialoguing and sharing. I get, at-hand tutelage and leadership lessons. And though he can hear me and I know he is sympathetic and understanding in that way and empathetic, he doesn't have to experience what I have to experience as being an African-American woman leading in this role as first. Though there's room for me in the room and at the table, I still have to navigate through my challenges of being a Black woman in a city that is marred with its own challenges with race, equity, diversity, inclusion. Again, grateful to be here, but the reality is there's so much more work to be done.
Nisha, can I add something to that?
Absolutely.
Because what she was very eloquent in what she said, but I'm going to tell you, because she was the first African-American deputy commissioner, but before that, she was the first African-American female chief of investigations and full colonel in the organization. So I promoted her twice, but here's the thing, and I made a point to very intentionally and very purposefully leave out of my talking points that she was the first. I did not want that to be the headline. I want the headline to be she's the most qualified. And we were very intentional because the media here is well, you know about the Baltimore media. It's something else. I wanted the headline to be she was the most qualified, and I walked through her qualifications, and there's nobody around that can match her qualifications, and she's deserving of the promotion, and was the obvious choice. And so now, of course, they asked questions. They caught on that she was the first. But I made a point to make sure that I walked so that every member of my department who was listening heard me say, you know, this is the most important reason why she was selected. She's the most qualified. And while she is the first, we celebrate that. But she beat everybody else hands down and has done the work and has earned the right to be where she is. And I look forward to see where she's going.
You know what? I agree with you. I mean, I had the privilege to watch, you know, the things that she had to go through to get to where she's going, where she is, and where she's going. And I think you just bring up an important point. We're talking about, well, all of you brought up important points. We're talking about women. We're talking about Black women in particular today. But when one boat rises, they all rise. And so, you know, and part of the reason why you're part of this conversation is we as women need to, you know, speak up and make sure that we're being seen. But all too often, we're not in the rooms where the men still are. And we have to have men saying what you're saying. They're qualified because they've been qualified for a long time. There just didn't happen to be somebody who saw them and gave them and recognized, not gave anything, recognized what they had done so that they could continue to serve in the way that they're doing now. And so I just really wanted to highlight that it takes really all of us to make you know, the fair and equitable police departments that we're talking about. And one other issue that came up in DC, you hit on this, is a concept where, you know, the film mentions it and studies show that women use force less, they problem solve more. And so, you know, the question that I've been asking around the country is if those statistics are true, and that's what we see, then what is the role of women in reform in this moment where use of force is used by people who don't even know what the word use of force means? It's on the tip of everybody's tongue. And so if I could come to you, Commissioner Outlaw, and ask you, first of all, you know, if your experience bears that out, and if so, what role should women under your command be playing, or women across the country be playing in this conversation of reimagine policing as it relates to use of force?
So I just want to say flat out, you know, we can do anything, right?
Yes.
Since that, I mean, and I know this isn't what's meant by that, but you know, when we first started, it's amazing how things come full circle. First started when we were allowed to be police officers, we were police patrons.
Exactly.
I can think of, you know, in my home department, you know, the first woman, you know, we were allowed to do child abuse investigations because we were nurturers. Skirt with the purse, with the gun. I mean, there were only certain things that we can do. We were limited because of our interpersonal skills and our skill set. And then of course the biases and the things that, well, you guys are great at problem solving these things, so we're going to put you over here for all the soft, fluffy things, and we're going to leave the manly stuff. And then as you know, translate that into, as we're talking about use of force and the other skill sets or the other things that we do in our day-to-day activities, I think it just goes to show that interpersonal skills are soft skills, right? Which was, again, wasn't a term that people said out loud. We find that, oh, these are translatable to field work, to patrol. Or, you know, for somebody like me, when I first started over 20 years ago, you know, I believe I was 20 pounds lighter and at least 2 feet shorter, right? So I knew I wasn't about to try to fight. To this day, I'm not about to try to fight a 6'5", 250-pound man. I'm just not gonna do it. So very early on, we know how to rely heavily on our other strengths to come to the same conclusion, as opposed to, and don't get me wrong, there are a few of my female colleagues, they kind of fell into that. I'm, you know, one of them. And I could think of the person now that had her nose broken 6 times, you know, or this, that, and the other, because they thought they were about to come out here and put hands on a, you know, or if you're just not a fighter, or if that's just not your thing, right? But step outside of themselves because of what we were told and conditioned to believe we were supposed to be. You know, everybody running around like Mighty Mouse or whatever it is. Some women can get down like that. I'm not saying they can't, But because of the other skills that we use in other facets of our lives, right? And however else we got here, if we were conditioned to play with, again, it is what it is. We are the caregivers of the entire universe. We are nurturers. We have soft skills. Because of that, I'm going to find a way before I'm even getting out the car. I'm figuring out a way to finesse how this person is going to put these cuffs on themselves. And so that's why you may see that the numbers are lower, because that's not our first, that's not our go-to.
Right.
Because we know if we escalate, then we're going to have to escalate even higher.
Right.
If I meet you at here, they're coming here. And then the older we get, we just realize I don't have time for that. I'm going home. I don't heal in the same way that I used to. So all of that to say, yes, the research is there, but yes, we bring a skill set that might be different. And it doesn't mean that those who identify, with other genders don't have that ability or can't be taught that. But what we're now doing and what we're now seeing is more of an emphasis, whether it's in training in the academy or in in-service training. There's a stronger focus on procedural justice, but also the use of interpersonal skills. And a lot of the things that we're now uplifting and valuing as we're talking about reimagining public safety and, ensuring that our values reflected treating people with dignity and respect. We know you can't do that without talking about these soft skills and problem solving and getting to yes in other ways. So again, it's 2021 and we're now saying, oh yeah, these are great things.
Right.
And you're now starting to see, again, more women at the table, but it's because we're realizing, oh, and don't get me wrong, there's some tokenism there too. But I think there's an acknowledgement that, oh, women do bring a different skill set. There is something different about even how we lead and how we get things done and accomplished. So again, all of that to say, quite frankly, and I'm not saying that men don't have the ability to do a lot of the things that we do naturally. Quite frankly, some women can't speak to people.
True, this is true.
But it's certainly something that we have to continue to pay attention to as far as fostering collaborative environments, not just within the department, but also with the community. And then recognizing that if there's research there, if there's there, if there's data there, more people need to jump behind what we know is research and proven.
Absolutely, absolutely. Couldn't have said it better. Commissioner Harrison, as I was listening to Commissioner Outlaw, it makes me think of EPIC and, all these kind of skills that you were, leading at the forefront when you were in New Orleans. What has been your experience? Even all the wonderful things that your wife has taught you,
Which is everything. But go ahead.
But what has been your experience in women with using force less, problem solving more, and how do you feel like as we are reimagining policing and having these conversations that needs to be folded into that work?
Well, first of all, thank you. It has always been my experience, even in my younger years when I was an internal affairs investigator as a sergeant, lieutenant, commander, that there was always evidence that our female officers use less force, but they weren't putting themselves in situations where force had to be used because they were better problem solvers and they always applied the training better because they didn't give in to the machoism culture. Even now in Baltimore, we find the very same thing. And we had a very diverse department there. We have a very diverse department here, probably more so than many departments with female officers and supervisors in our agency. But it's all about training, but it's also about the culture of the agency and the culture of the leadership of the agency in supporting less force, culture change, duty to intervene, peer intervention, anti-retaliation, strong discipline. But when you put all of those things together, you then begin to shape a culture that supports all problem solving and community engagement as the basic crime fighting strategy. It took a long time for me to move New Orleans away from much of traditional crime fighting strategy into a community policing philosophy. And we made that the premier crime fighting strategy. Of course, that's traditional policing. Of course, we have to pursue those who are creating havoc in our communities, but we do it through a community policing philosophy. That's what we're doing here in Baltimore. But I'm finding that you have, first of all, our female employees are far more inviting and are far more accepting of that model, because the other model, the go get them, let's go catch everybody, you know, that's a male dominated model that has failed us and put us into a consent decree in both cities. And so the community policing model is usually accepted far easier, far better, more broadly by our female officers, because they do a far better job of engagement. All the things you heard Commissioner Outlaw talk about, they do a far better job. You know, we're learning to do many of those things, but if we could learn how to not create an environment that requires us to have to de-escalate.
Right.
If we could learn how to create that environment first, we will be a lot better off. I think from my experience, you know, many times female officers do a better job not putting themselves in a position where they then have to defend the position that they're in. If that makes sense.
No, it makes complete sense. I hear you. I remember standing in a room five or so years ago with chiefs. It was a major city chiefs thing, and I said, well, what are we going to do when the officer actually is the one that escalated? You know, there's really no mitigation or thought really in what we're doing right now that takes that into consideration. So DC Briscoe, do you want to add anything to that? I mean, you kicked off that conversation. Do you have anything to add, or I'll go to my next question.
I have nothing additional to add. I think that was well covered. We can move to your next question.
Okay, perfect. So, you know, I spoke to a chief recently that had to take many of his Black officers off the line at a protest. You know, you guys have been in the middle of it. I've been there as a civilian. All sorts of things are said, thrown, all sorts of things when you're, you know, in the midst of those protests. But the things that were being said to them were particularly rough because they were calling them out as Black people who were traitors. And so the tears were streaming and they were taken offline. And so it makes me think about when Sergeant White said that it was the first time that she had to choose Black or blue after the murder of George Floyd. And I'm just wondering, have you ever felt that way yourself, or been in a position now where you are a leader of a department and have those type of dynamics going on in your police department, and how you're dealing with that? And I'll start with you, DC Briscoe.
Thank you for that question. I think that they're in different dynamics. I think that at some point, you're often challenged as an African-American officer when you're seeing certain things. For me, when I saw that clip, the fact that she felt like she had to choose just gripped me in a way, because recognize the fact that we're all human. There's no choice. It's either right or wrong. And if it's wrong and it's blue wearing it, that's no choice. You are standing in the zip code of right, and you're standing in the humanity. So for me personally, that's not a place that I'm going to choose. I'm going to always choose right, even when everyone else is looking at it and saying, I'm going to accept this wrong. No, I'm going to stand with right. I'm going to model right. I'm going to go with, and I'm saying that to say that sometimes you are standing in your uniform, acknowledging that this thing is wrong. It's not about the uniform. It's about the humanity, and it's about acknowledging the fact that we are all deserving of the rights of life. And so if that's the unpopular conversation, I'm fine with being unpopular, period. And I make no apology for that. And that's the place that you stand in, even when everyone else is standing with wrong. You have to, as a leader, set yourself up, have a level of standard that is in alignment with your beliefs as a human being, as in you're going to value all life, and you're going to uphold that truth about yourself, regardless of the uniform you're wearing, as in the color of rank, regardless of the position you're standing in, because at the end of the day, your credibility as a human being, as a person wearing this uniform, you can never get that back, and it is not for sale. So you have to stand in the position of what is right and what stands with humanity. And that gripped me in the way when I heard that come out of her mouth, and I wondered, what is she facing beyond this one moment that we see, and what is the culture and climate of an organization and a structure that will require her to make her feel like she had to choose.
Commissioner Outlaw or Commissioner Harrison, any comments on that one?
Oh yeah, I just, when you put that question out there, there's so many instances. I will say this: I experienced some serious cognitive dissonance when Trayvon Martin was killed. And there have been many times in my career when I said, you know what, I'm gonna take this MBA, go to the private sector, and you know, I think the grass is greener. But there's always something that happens shortly after that reminds me that I am walking in my purpose. And it's not gonna always be easy. It could be a little girl looking up at me with those big deer in the headlights eyes going, wow, you're the, and you know, when you have to explain it to little kids, their parents usually say, she's the boss of all the police, you know, it's something, or someone comes up to me in tears and says, wow, I'm truly inspired. I receive people's energy. So literally exhausted at the end of every day, because it could just be emotional ebbs and flows. It can be somebody calling me everything but what my mama named me. And in the morning, by the end of the day, it's somebody just wanting to give me a hug and take a picture because, and literally in tears, just because of what I represent, right? But for the first time, you know, I remember in Portland, it was said to my face, I was called a race traitor, and they yelled at me, what are little Black girls gonna think? And that was the first time when I saw that people expected me to choose. And especially even more so in Portland, Oregon, because it's less than 6% people of color, period. And so I think there was an expectation that I was going to come in and only be the police chief for Black people or Black and brown people. And then I had to explain very clearly, I'm everyone's police chief. And in fact, I'm Black and blue. Remember I said I happened to choose this career my entire life, but my entire adult career has been in law enforcement. So I understand why we do some things, but I also bring my perspective and my lived experience to shape and influence a lot of the policy decisions and just the things that I say and do, right? Leading an organization. But I will tell you, when I heard the term and somebody referring to me as a race traitor, that cut me deep. You have to have some thick skin to sit in seats, right? It's a lot that bounces off my back. When they called me that, I said, this person doesn't know my heart. They don't know anything about me. And when it comes from your own people, it cuts you deeper.
Yeah. So
even amongst the African-American community, there was, and it wasn't until a pastor came out and said, she's not just the chief for us, she's the chief for everybody. And then you can see the light bulbs click on and go, oh, right? But that was the first time where, and after that, I'll never forget it. I said, I'm gonna make it very, very clear moving forward that there is no this or this. I'm not one or the other, I'm both. I will not allow what I was born with to be politicized. And what we're talking about is humanity. I remember, I don't ever, again, remember, I'm very careful when I say always, never, and now ever. I hardly ever respond to the general comments from the public that are just mean and nasty and just angry and, you know, comment without context or whatever it is. But this one particular day, after our department developed a video to talk about what we learned the year after George Floyd's murder, I got a nasty email from someone. And I actually took the time to respond to them because, you know, they tried to politicize what we're doing. And I pretty much responded to them. And I said, in so many words, initially, it's too bad, you know, that you believe that his murder was acceptable or something like that. I forgot what I said. I said, but if you want to have a conversation or if you're questioning my moral leadership, I'm not going to apologize for it. Like, because we're talking about human beings and humanity. Start saying, well, this is right if they're Black and this is wrong if they're white, or you're politicizing something we can't change, something that I was born with, that my sons can't change. And when my youngest came to me recently and in tears telling me that he was afraid because he now realizes that people are afraid of him just because of what he looks like, that broke my heart. But did that say, of course, the dissonance always kicks in, but I'm constantly motivated and I continue to move forward in this space unapologetically because I know if we don't continue to do it, then the narrative is going to go away. People are going to think this is just a moment in time and it's not something to be taken seriously. And more people need to be encouraged to come out and speak their truth from their perspective. And the more we do that, and the more we tell people, you do not have to choose. Don't you ever make anybody believe that you do. I think the better off we'll be moving forward because we were made to believe early on, either you're with us or with them. And it's time for us in these organizations to say, oh, no, remember, we are of the community.
Yep.
We get our authority from the community. So if we continue to allow this divide to occur, it's going to continue. We're just perpetuating what we're trying to get away from. So again, there's so many stories that I can share with that. And again, then it's, oh, you're race baiting or you're what? No, I'm not. I'm speaking from my place. And if you say you love me as a human being, and I'll tell you, the end of this email thread ended with, I mean, they said I was despicable, a human being, all these things, you name it. By the end of it, we agreed to disagree. But if you would stay safe, God bless, for responding, blah, blah, blah. Because like, how can you say you honor all these things and the Constitution and you stand on Christian beliefs, whatever it is, but yet you can spew the most ugly hate. I mean, the feds are investigating racist death threats against me for speaking my truth, for the statement that I made after George Floyd was killed. I mean, I know Chief Magnus is on here. Ask him what it's like as a white man to hold up a sign that says Black Lives Matter. It was before, you know, it became people painting Black Lives Matter on major thoroughfares. It wasn't a popular thing to do. So I'm just gonna conclude by saying, again, this is not a choice. Humanity is not a choice. What we're born with, people like it, we can't change this. So what's right or wrong is based off of basic humanity. And as long as we keep that in the back of our minds, I think the more confident we'll be when having to make a decision.
I totally agree with you. That humanity, one of the things, my life's work is trying to bring human-centered thinking to all of these police issues. One day I'll be back and let y'all know how I figured that one out. Commissioner Harrison, do you have any comments on that one, or you want to pop to the next question?
I think there's nothing more I can really say. You know, both of them answered that very, very, very well. I'll say that I am both, just like you heard Commissioner Allah. I'm both a Black man and I'm a police commissioner or police chief. I cannot separate, nor will I ever be able to separate, nor should I separate the two. And I think I'll just end by saying, I always, and I think it's important that people in our positions should make it known who we are and what we stand for and what we don't stand for. So I don't put myself in a position where I'm asked to make a decision to be one or the other, because I make it known what I stand for, what I don't. And that comes out in my speaking, that comes out in my communication, comes out in my policies. Internally to my officers and externally to the community, it comes out in my policies and it comes out in discipline. So I do my best not to put myself in a position or to have others put me in a position where I have to choose or they have to help me choose, because I make them know what I am and who I am and what I stand for.
You know, similar to, and every time I have one of these conversations, you know, or have a side conversation, there are things that are very clear about when we talk about race and gender. And then there is all this nuance that we often have to maneuver through, particularly as leaders of organizations where we know what's the saying about police, they hate how it is now and hate change, right? And so I think that's us as human beings, but particularly, you know, in law enforcement. And so it probably won't be surprising to you that there have been women who said, you know, an effort like 30 by 30 or filmed uplifting women in policing, they take issue with it. And it reminds me of a woman that I knew in policing who was very angry when I started women initiatives. She did not want to be called out as a woman. She did not want to be looked at as a woman because she thought that took away from her just merit. But she became a police chief, and we've had another conversation. And she says, looking back on things and things that are happening to her now, she knows it's specifically because she's a woman. And so, again, this is why these conversations are so important. All of you all have taken the pledge to increase women in the ranks in your police departments. Have you heard the criticism or even personally or as a leader that, oh, you're trying to uplift women and, you're either, I think somebody mentioned earlier, giving them a leg up where they don't deserve it, or they're just seats that are being given out because, they're Black or they're female. Have you all had to deal with that? And if so, how are you responding to the criticism and still forging forward? Anybody can jump on that one.
I've not had any criticism, or let's just say I haven't heard of any criticism. From all indications, members of our department supported, members of our community supported. I think although we make this pledge, the standards, the hiring standards don't have to get adjusted. We want people who want to be in this career and who have the temperament to do this work. It's not just the physical agility portion, but it's their temperament to be able to do this work. And as we shift more into a guardian model, away from the warrior model, into a community policing, crime fighting strategy, and a community policing centric organization, I think people really embrace having an initiative like 30 by 30 and having more women in our department. I'm not seeing or sensing in any way any pushback or any rejection to this.
I'd say this too, and in speaking about 30 by 30, I want to give a shout out to Yvonne Roman. I know she's on here. This has to, the best way to put this is this. Again, once you reach these seats, especially for me, I didn't move everything, across the country and leave everything as I knew it to come out and half-ass do something. So again, what I say is intentional. What I do is unapologetic. I'm very strategic, and I'm going to ask questions if I don't know. Period, point blank. Talk about doing something like supporting the 30 by 30 initiative. It's very intentionally done, right? It's not saying that we're lowering standards. We recognize that we need to increase our diversity by being very intentional and adopting these strategic objectives. Not only are we going to attract more women, we are going to attract diversity across the board, because we're no longer marketing to who we think would be the top. We're no longer showing videos of people rappelling out of helicopters. You know what I'm saying? Now that's a part of it, but we don't do that all day, every day. We're now showing the single mom. Cherie mentioned, she got a 6-month-old. When I took physical agility, I was still in stitches, just had my son, and his legs were still bunched up. You know what I mean? So you have to show working women or new moms or people in second and third careers or people with doctorates in engineering or whatever it is, that you too can do this. And there is a place for you here. And then once we attract them, get them in, what do our policies look like? Do we have a supportive organization to retain all of this diversity that we got here? Something that happened to me, you talk about, gender and how it impacts what we do here. My very first day here. Yeah, I might've fell for the banana in the tailpipe, but I don't care. It is what it is. I'm walking through the hallway and somebody says, Commissioner, your nail polish is out of policy. I was like, oh, okay, change it. Kept it moving. The narrative after that was all this crime here in the city of Philadelphia, and the first thing that the Philadelphia police commissioner does is allow women to wear nail polish, right? She changed, that's what she cares about. I'm like, look, first of all, It's like, where to begin with this? But I use that as an opportunity because, of course, on my second day when I'm doing all these interviews, I use it as an opportunity to say, look, let me tell you how this was taken out of context, but let me tell you why this is so important. I'm telling you that when I'm going out, and this is what I do, I go to community events or whatever it is, I'm poaching, I'm trying to get more people to leave, you know, vendors that might work with law enforcement, but I think you can come work and be law enforcement, right? If I'm saying I want you for all these amazing things that make you you, and then I hire you, and then we do the classic, now everything I said, forget that. I want you to be this, this, and this, and this only. You're not going to keep all of this talent that you hired, especially know that we're also targeting millennials. There's a different ask there of the millennial generation. We have to market towards the strengths, right? And so somebody wants to come in and be who they are and, you know, express their identity and, you know, all of those things, we have to allow for that. What do your policies say? And this is, you know, something that's next in the hopper for us, but it was something that I changed in Portland before I left. What's your uniform policy say? You know, if women can wear earrings, can men wear earrings? Can men wear beards? You know, is your language in your policies gender neutral?
Yeah.
I just happened to learn by an accident when I was looking for a specific policy when I first got here. All the references to the police commissioner was his, him, blah, blah, blah. I'm offended, right? I don't offend easy, but come on, y'all. Let's
right.
You know, we have to step our game up. So, and again, we just moved into a new facility. How many gender neutral bathrooms do you have? Do you have rooms?
Yeah.
You know, and if you are really on the cutting edge, we're not there yet. Are you allowing people to take sabbaticals? Is there work sharing, job sharing? All of the things that we know are happening in real time in the private sector. Not only recruit for diversity, but to retain diversity. Is that something that we're willing to do here? Who have in positions of leadership? Are you being intentional with your promotions? Are you letting women walk away saying, because we know culturally that's how it is in law enforcement, we say, oh, I'm not ready yet. Aren't you ready? Because when you look at the qualifications of some of these other people that are sitting in these seats that you work for, you're like, well, thanks, right? So how are you encouraging those folks? Are you reaching down and tapping the shoulders of your up and coming superstars? That happened with me, right? To say, I'm going to develop you. I expect you to get here in an X amount of time, blah, 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 right? Because we might be walking around thinking, oh, well, I'm just going to do this, right? Not knowing that there's other possibilities for us or that we are even capable of doing it because we think we got to do this for 10 years, that for 10 years, that for another 10.
Right.
What we're doing as leaders to reach down and identify our up and coming superstars, to develop them, to make sure there's leadership development, to ensure there's executive development. And then also while we're doing all of that, there's diversity in the cohorts, you know, amongst these groups, because we all tend to promote and come up through the ranks at the same time in groups. So when you have the same group of people that are eligible to retire, what does that leave you with? What are you doing to establish your bench? So there's so many things that at this point in the game, you just got to flat out do it. And if people don't understand, and that's how I see it, if you want to come out and, well, you doing this because, or you doing this, well, let me sit down and take some time to educate you on why initiatives like 30 by 30 are important.
Absolutely. Commissioner.
I thought about something after I stopped and Danielle began to talk that I wanted to jump back in, because while I said I don't see direct pushback for initiatives like 30 by 30, we do see pushback on reform in general. And there are people who are not accepting of reform in general. And so you hear cops say, you hear men cops say, oh, we can't do our jobs anymore. They're tying our hands behind our backs. We can't do what we used to do. And so I call that out very publicly. That's code and coded language for, you know, I can't kick ass. I can't put my hands on you. You know, we can't do what we used to be able to do, what people used to not complain about, rather. We were never really allowed to do it. People didn't complain and there weren't mechanisms to hold people accountable when we did. So, you know, I call that out. You know, the deputy and I, we call it out very publicly when we hear cops say stuff like that. So, but that's code for, I'm against this new model of policing, a lesser intrusive, a softer approach. It might be connected to more minorities, more women doing something different. So they don't directly come out and say it, but I think it's tied to that, that they want to keep the machoism culture and they're just against reform and reform initiatives in general. And I just wanted to put that out there.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. I saw it many times myself. DC Briscoe, you have something to say on that one?
I just wanted to add before we move on, one of the things that we've been doing under Commissioner Harrison's leadership is that we have an onboarded, assigned to the organization, an equity, diversity, and inclusion officer to just hold us accountable and help us in the ways that we haven't traditionally thought, like how are we making room for all of the types of people that we say we want and we need to include women? Like, is it a part of our process? Is it our policies that the impediment? Is it the way we evaluate who goes to training, what type of training is needed? I think that you have to show it. You have to model the things that you're saying as an organization that are important to you, and it has to be threaded throughout. It can't stop at the academy process. It can't stop at the recruitment process. And to hit retention, it has to be woven throughout. Where are the opportunities through policy and through action and different assignments that you're showing up saying, we welcome this difference and this change that has to happen in policing. And we're making room in a very noticeable, noted way that's woven throughout everything about the organization. And I just wanted to add that.
Well, and I appreciate you bringing that to fruition. I actually created that position when I was at the Baltimore Police Department, had to get it funded by a nonprofit, and didn't get it filled while I was there. Commissioner Harrison got it filled. But one of the reasons why I did that, and I'm saying this for this group, as we're talking about efforts to improve, whether it's around reform, bringing more women in the ranks into the police department. Police departments are not built right now, in my opinion, to do the things that we say that we want to do. We have command level positions, but Commissioner Outlaw did one of the greatest things I think ever is happening in police. And I think she got her a resident and expert, expert in resident. Nikki's on the call with us. Particularly in departments where violent crime is such a focus. And it's taken so much of your time to have additional command staff level people who are focusing on these initiatives, I think is critical. And I really hope somebody picks up that mantle and starts, advocating, because as soon as you ask for 2 more cents, you're going to get, cut all kind of ways by the media. But all of these expectations you have to have, as you all know, and a person with that eye that is, first of all, carrying through the commissioner's the words and policies, then actually going and making sure the resources are there, that it's happening, and then holding folks accountable when they are not doing it. And you just don't have that fat right now in your budget and your command staff budgets. So that was just a point of personal privilege about some of these initiatives. I am going to skip my next 2 questions and go to the last clip. Get 1 or 2 more questions in, and then we're going to open it up for audience participation.
I ask questions if they feel any type of discrimination in the workplace. If there is discrimination, is it based on gender, race, ethnicity? What can we do to improve everything from job satisfaction of women on this department to creating that path for promotion that I think is lacking right now? Law enforcement is still a male-dominated field, and women still want to fit in. As a woman, you have to be on this department a long time before you can be yourself. And before you can be yourself, you're generally labeled as something. You're either seen as a mother, a bitch, or a whore on this department. And I know that would make people uncomfortable, but that's true.
So it was masculine as a captain. I do my best to act this. Oh, Christ. How you doing?
Good morning. All right, so today, Director Patrol, if you guys had an area yesterday, can you also just DP that same area again today, please? I don't know if anyone yesterday went to North Regional Library. You've been walking through North Regional, right? Did you make it over there? No. No, we didn't do it. There was a homicide. It was right outside the library. So please, let's make a stop up at North
So work
Ridgeville.
overtime till 2 a.m. outside the library.
I can't approve that, but I can send that request to Inspector Bear if you'd like me to.
Library's gotta go.
Fahrenheit 451.
There's a common denominator here, it's the library.
That's the problem.
Stench of liberalism.
Oh, boy. A female sergeant, the guys you're supervising are looking to see how organic can they be around you. Because cops have their own sense of humor. It's very raunchy. If you were easily offended, you could make a human resource complaint about, you know, graphic sexual conversations. I let them do it. And I think that means a lot to them, that they can be who they are and not be worried, is Sergeant White going to go make an internal affairs complaint on us? Do we have to censor everything we say around her? And once they figured out, like, oh, she's cool, she's easygoing. If the conversation gets too far, she steps out the room.
I'm sure I would love to see you again.
All right, good talking to you guys. Have a great day.
So I've got quite a varied response when I show that clip. So I'm gonna ask you guys to do a little, what is it, Monday morning quarterback. I want you to dissect that clip for me a little bit. I am gonna give you a little context about Sergeant White at the time of this clip. She was a brand new sergeant, and she's the only Black female sergeant in the entire police department. And so that was her new assignment. And so I'd like for you all to tell me, what did you see in that clip? And, you know, for female leaders, or really leaders in general that are on this call, what is your advice in how to deal with that very real pressure that you find yourself in when you become a leader in a police department? So I'll go around the horn on this one. Maybe DC Briscoe, I'll start with you first.
You know, when we had the opportunity, thank you for that, Ganesha. When we had the opportunity to look at this clip, it gripped me in a lot of different ways, right? It just a lot of different ways. And I'm gonna be very, very honest here. Like the dismissiveness of the room, and she's the leader at the podium, giving some essential information and giving out tasks. And not that you shouldn't use please, but the fact that she's almost like, please do this with the sense of listen to me, hear me, see me kind of a feel. And I recognize that the context, right? She's the only African-American female supervisor. I understand that it was almost her lack of comfort being in her own skin, leading this group of people. The room is male, Black and white, and they were not prepared for duty. They didn't take seriously their tasks. So it was just a lot of different pulls when I watched that video clip. And I thought to myself, one, what was she going through? And I know when we debriefed about this, I had a list of questions, and then you gave me the context. I said, what is she dealing with? And what was she going through that she felt like she had to marginalize herself or her standards to be accepted? And why did she feel like she had to tolerate it and make more room for it? Because if you make room for that type of behavior in the office, in your presence as a leader, only God knows what's happening out of your presence in the community as a leader and what they're doing to community. Because if they're dismissing you and being disrespectful toward you and outside of policy with you, what else are they doing? And then in some way, shape, or form, you show up trying to battle and inadvertently in some ways, potentially become complicit to the behaviors that ultimately you may see outside of your door because you're not taking a stance in the room. That first line supervisor, that first supervisory break can make or break your team. That's the immediate hand closest to the line and how engagement happens and response happens with community. And if we're showing up as leaders, giving at that point, you don't even see the end result of what you're allowing to have happen out of your presence, because of the level of dismissiveness and complacency with the team. So a lot of different, and I know we're Monday morning quarterbacking it, but it just stirred a lot of different emotions within me, and they weren't all good. I can understand in certain ways, empathize with the struggle, but you have to make a stance, and you have to, again, choose right and choose humanity. I'll stop there.
Yeah, well, the last thing that I would like to say is if she sent you that video and she called you up, she's your mentee. And she sent you that video and you had all those feelings stirring up, and she called you and she said, ooh, I don't want that to happen next time I go in there. What would be your advice to her on how to handle that next time?
So my advice to a sergeant, especially recognizing the rank differences, I'm first going to stand on the policy. And if the policy is inadequate, I'm going to stand right. And I'm going to govern her in that way. And I'm going to caution her with the unintended consequence of allowing such things to happen in her presence and what she's fostering in that leadership and understanding of policing and expectation. So you're lowering the standard. And anytime you do that, they're going to crawl further below the bar of standard. And so I'm just going to caution her to, first of all, remember why she raised her right hand, what she stood for when she joined, what she expected, what she seeks in leaders, and model that and be unapologetic about it and for it. Hold everybody, to include herself first, to the policy, what is morally sounding right, what is ethically sounding right. I made legal last because sometimes legalities doesn't hold true to what's standard and what is tolerable for humanity. Because as a society and as a country, we said certain things have been legal, from to segregation. So I made legal last in my statement. But I tell you, you have to hold yourself true to moral compass values. And if it's not good for you and your family, don't allow it out of your team.
Well, she'd be lucky to have you as a mentor, I have to tell you. All right, I'm gonna come over to you, Commissioner Harrison, then we're gonna have Commissioner Outlaw round it out.
Now you see why she's my deputy commissioner. I might take me one of them sabbaticals I heard Chief Outlaw talk about and let her handle it for a little while, because she will definitely handle it. Look, there's a lot to unpack there, and she unpacked a lot of it. I will tell you that having run now 2 large police departments, that's an agency culture that has been allowed to grow and to fester and to just become out of control. And to me, what happened is she did not set the tone of who she was and what her expectations were when she first became a sergeant and on her first day. And this is not her first day. And because she didn't set that, and part 2, nobody in her supervisory chain, apparently above her, a lieutenant, maybe a captain, or whatever the rank structure is, nobody socialized to those officers that this was the sergeant and that type of behavior would be unacceptable and what was expected. And that culture, shows itself through in the video. There are, and I'll piggyback on what she said, dismissive. They were very dismissive, but that's not just the culture for that roll call room. That's an agency culture, and the expectations, in my opinion, weren't appropriately set either by her or by other command members to set the stage for her to come in and be successful. And had that been done by her lieutenant or the district commander to come in and make sure that if she's the first, that there's a level of professionalism and decorum that has to exist, and maybe arm her and equip her with what she needs to do and say to make sure that happens. That's a much bigger picture than what you saw her do or fail to do. There's a lot there of what the agency has failed to do.
Absolutely, Commissioner.
So I'm going to do my best. I'm going to try to approach it from a different angle because a lot was covered, and in watching it, I didn't realize my camera was still on. So when the video was off and the camera was like, oh, it's on my face. But I don't know if you saw me. I was sitting there like this, right? My blood was boiling, but for many different reasons. A lot of it was covered by the DC, but there's also, I think, and I don't remember which question it was, at some point we begin to believe that we have to lead in that way.
Yes,
Or to be successful, or in order to, you know, if we go along, you'll be just fine. Or
Mhm.
we'll put you in these positions if you just continue to go through, right? But am I really being empowered
Mhm.
to be my true authentic self?
Mhm.
Right? So then I would question, why you even put her in that situation, in that position in the first place?
Mhm.
The other thing, and it angers me, not against her, it angers me that she believes.
Mhm.
Why does she believe she has to lead in this way?
Mhm. Mhm.
I'm mad at her. That's a cultural thing.
Mhm.
Why didn't that agency set her up for success? We tend to be bass backwards. The military has it right. And for us to be paramilitary, it's amazing how we haven't necessarily picked it up from them yet.
Mm.
We put people in positions and then they go figure it out.
Mhm. Mhm.
Training or whatever.
Mhm.
You know, especially since those frontline supervisors, those first, you know, that's the first transition. It's one of the most difficult to make because you're now going from peer to supervisor, right? And we all know this. There's research out there that shows that. Develop them before you put them in this position, or within promotion, within 6 months, within 2 weeks, within 3 months, whatever it is, put them through a course.
Mhm.
Because
Yeah.
leadership, everybody doesn't know that you got to set the tone early. Everybody doesn't know that maybe necessarily you need to, you know, walk in your true authentic self from day one. So that way they know that everything that you do, everything that I do is aligned with the organization's values, with the mission, the vision, the value statement, right? And so there should be no surprises when I come and have to discipline you or chin check you for whatever it is, because it says it right here, right?
Yeah.
Of course, we can still be human beings and have fun and, you know, have personalities and all that. But all this, you know, talking about sexual stories and all that kind of stuff, please believe, if you think if I got that comfortable and had a conversation around the table, do you think somebody's not going to be recording it and leak it to the press and then come get me?
Mhm. Mhm.
Mortgage over these conversations that y'all having so I can feel comfortable, or you'll let me continue to come in as your boss. No, it's your privilege to come in here and work with me.
Mhm.
And so the different angle that I'm taking is we have to develop our leaders before we put them in the positions.
Yeah.
Put them with training. And all of these things are taught, right? It's not just the principles of leadership, but it's how to be yourself, how to set expectations, how to put people on performance plans, you know, and culturally it's different. West Coast, when a commander walks in the room, you might not have people, everybody standing at attention, but for daggone sure, when you come over here, people are up in the room when I walk in the room. Right?
Yes.
You're not slouching in your seat when you come in the room. I don't care. You just don't. Right. And so all of that to say, what pains me most is that she believed that's what she had to do. So it's important in forums like this and the other leaders that are on this call to make very clear when you select your leaders, speak with them. Tell them these aren't only my expectations, but let me tell you how I'm going to support you.
That's right.
In furthering my mission, vision, values. So you're not out here on your own. Okay, that's what hurts me the most is that she really believed she had to be like, oh, who was responsible for this? Oh, you're supposed to do that? You didn't do it? No? Oh, okay. Well, can you try again today? Huh?
Right.
I mean, every now and again that may happen.
Right.
But just even more so as a new supervisor, that department or whomever it was set her up for failure. Her even thinking that she had to do that.
And she lost the ability to ever discipline them in the future, should she have to discipline them for something similar, because they set the tone that that was acceptable, and she lost the ability for her to be able to ever do that going forward. And it's really hard, if not impossible, to go back and do that and be effective at it once you start off with that leadership knowledge.
And I realize I got to put this out there too. I realize if that was Minneapolis, I realize Rondo's there now. I'm not knocking my boy Rondo. I know this stuff is old, but cultures, structural isms, all these things that we are trying to break apart as new leaders, we have to recognize that we are inheriting decades and decades and decades of what's built into the structures and the very fabric of these cultures and these departments. So it's not going to happen overnight, but there are, again, some very clears that can be done to set the tone and make it very clear what's tolerated and what's not. If we say we celebrate diversity, we truly have to celebrate diversity. And that means we have to be equitable and we have to include.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I appreciate all that. And this is going to tie into my next two questions. I'm going to go to a couple of chiefs that we have on the call that I know have been dealing with some of these issues too. I'm going to start with them first. But that second part of the clip was when it takes a long time for you to be able to be yourself on a department, and that I won't cuss, even though I cuss a lot normally, but I won't do that here. To be a hoe, a bee, or a mother. And, unfortunately, that phrase did not strike me because I have heard that across the country in various police departments. And so if I'm hearing in a lot of different places, then I'm believing it to be true. So let's talk about if we have those experiences, we've seen that with her, we know those are other folks' experience. Tell me, some of the things that you are doing. Some of them have been mentioned: mentoring, making sure they put that support, making sure that the expectations are clear from everybody, from the street on up. But let me come to some of the other chiefs and tell us some general thoughts that you've had, but then also if there's things that you're doing that we can pass along as learnings on here for other folks who are dealing with some of these things. I'm going to come to Chief Hawkins. How are you over there in Fayetteville?
Hey, everyone. I am outstanding, first of all. It's been an amazing listening session, very good panel. This could go on for weeks of the learning, but Fayetteville is awesome right now.
It's awesome. Well, I know we know you're leading it, so we know it's awesome.
So the perspective is this. Let me add a couple things. Yes, yes, and yes to what everyone has said, basically. In regards to how I feel of how long it takes for you to be yourself, it really is. It's about empowering yourself. It's also about ownership of yourself. We go a long way as individuals, and this could be male or female across the board. We go a long way with having an image of we think what is the best leader we're trying to be. But that comes from either our experience, from the inception of how we grow up, to what we see, what we're exposed to. And we may be doing it wrong for a long time period until we run across someone who could snatch our coattail and say, snap out of it. That is not, good and well, that internal compass is saying that's unacceptable. Your voice is your power. You will have challenges, but I know in reality that is hard. That's hard for some people. That's hard. I have a great father and parents that allow me to speak up as a young child. So my mouth has been big for a long time, but that's not everyone. And that's also individualized. I have two daughters. And I remember my oldest, middle school, she was getting bullied. And I remember I had a stepson at the time. He said, how can she be getting bullied if she has a mother like you that's always teaching her about her voice and her empowerment? And then I have to realize people internalize their own truth and their own challenges. So what we can tool them with is first knowing what their own individual challenge may be. And that could be identifying, you can grow up in the same household, identifying how you communicate and how you perceive things, how people perceive you in certain ways. And really learning that, whether it be Myers-Briggs, whether it be how you deliver, what message you're trying to give, but learning how to communicate what you feel and being confident that you have support with that and how you feel is a key. So I like to remind people that you are empowered and your voice is powerful no matter what rank and no matter what you're wearing. I take off this uniform and I'm still me, and my youngest had a bad day at college when she showed up. Her apartment, her new apartment was a mess. And one of the other mothers says, come on, you're the chief. I said, no. I am not the chief today. I'm the mother. That's the person you don't want today. I'm the mother today. So, and being able to take care of things is really about that sergeant. Oh my goodness. I would literally just say, let's come talk to me. Come talk to me. I know that had to have been one of the worst experiences you had. Now, I want to give you the ability to touch base with me or find someone else and say, let's scenario this out. Let's role play this out. If I say this, if they say this, what else are you going to say? And also remember, time is on your side. You can just say, let me get back with you. Walk away, put it all together and practice it and prepare. But knowing those rules and regulations, I don't cuss, first of all, just FYI, I don't. But my best friend does. So if I need a venting session, I let her go cuss it out. But that's one of the questions that was asking me when I came here as a chief. They said, you know, do you get angry? You gonna cuss at us sometime? I'm like, no, I'm not gonna cuss at you, because when I don't cuss, then they said, well, can we cuss? I said, no, absolutely not in any setting that I have, because I don't expect you to be cussing out to the public. If you can't be professional in this behind the scenes, what do I expect when you go out to the community of how we emulate what we expect? So how we treat each other behind the scenes will be absolutely on par to what we expect to how we treat the community. And if we can't respect ourselves and respect each other and respect our authority and respect our opinions behind the scenes, how can I expect us to do that or emulate that to the community? So that's crucial. That's like you being safe first, protect your liability, protect your rules. You know, it's not just let it go, address it, confront it. That's the hardest thing to do, but you're going to have to confront it, because if you don't confront it with that individual, you are confronting it with yourself every single day. You look in the mirror and you know you are. In your mind, you can't get rid of your mind. Every single day, you know that's a problem that I can't get over. I can't get over. And then that just wears down on your own self confidence. So first, you got to be true to yourself and knowing that that's not right. That's not how we're going to operate. And how am I going to continue to be a leader? So 2 cents.
Thank you for that. Thank you for that. Oh, somebody's gonna say so. Oh, go ahead, Commissioner.
Really quick. It looks, I want to add to that too, that we often call and vent with each other. I just texted Gina just now, right? So, I mean, you have to have, especially the higher up you go, you don't vent downwards. So you have to create a circle, whether it's, you know, within your department or even in your networks, create a network of people that you can also bounce some of our experiences off of and be like, hey, how do you deal with this? What'd you think about that? This happened to me today. But what I wanted to say really quick, and I'll just leave it out there, because we know there's double and triple standards, right? Especially for those of us that may look younger, that might be more feminine, you know, or whatever it is. We said that we are branded as moms, bees, and hoes. My response back to that is, okay, so what? What if you are? Not in the illegal sense, with, you know what I'm saying? We're talking about in the stereotypes.
Mm-hmm.
What is your job performance?
Mm-hmm.
What are you doing to bring all of that to the forefront? And I say that because, and again, I'm not being dismissive of any of those things, because I know exactly what's meant by that.
Mm-hmm.
There are men who are parents that sleep with everything that walk through here, right? And then are just cranky, evil people, and they can be the cop's cop. Oh, they're just aggressive. They're just assertive. So I just leave that out there and say, so what if people think that about you? Now what? Okay, you know that. Take that. Now what? That's all I want to add.
You know what? I appreciate that. And I think that's so important because, you know, even getting prepared for this panel, there was a chief that I talked to, a Black female chief, and something that she said was stand in your truth, stand in your authenticity. And I do that often, but every now and again, you need a reminder. And that just shook me straight, you know, back. I will say, and this is something that we're going to work on, if you talk to Alice, she doesn't know a support person to reach out to. because, you know, we do things like this. We go to IACP, we go to Major City Chiefs. She wouldn't know the first person to reach out to. So I think one of the things that we definitely want to come from 30 by 30 and some of this work is making sure that there is a space that where folks know how to, and when they reach out, that hand is there to help. I'm gonna end this the question and answer series with just going to Chief Clary. I don't want to say your name right. Is that right, Chief Clary? I know that you have been a long time staunch you know, advocate of this work, and you know, speak about the work that you've done and some of the ways that you've had to fight and help actually, you know, bring to fruition some of these efforts, if you don't mind sharing with us.
Well, first of all, I'm honored to be part of this. Listening to this group, it's you know, eye-opening. You know, I learned so much from you guys, and I want to listen 99% and talk 1%. But you know, the thing that strikes me is the perspective. You know, truly understanding, because I think people like myself who have positions of power, middle-aged white males who run the majority of the police departments around the nation, lack perspective. They have, it's truly ignorance, which is not necessarily a bad word. It's just a lack of knowledge. You know, they need to gain perspective in order to truly understand the issues that we have. Coming from a state police organization, I know there's one of the members on here, a female member of that department, one of the very few handful of leaders out of 600 sworn that are actually female. They're rife with ignorance, and it's unfortunate because they don't even recognize the problems that they have. You know, as we tried to stand up some leadership and mentoring programs for women, the few women that there were, about 4.5%, we were trying to grow the number of women and opportunities and mentorship opportunities so that they didn't face things like the women on the videos were facing, where they lacked support from the top. They also lacked ability to be mentored so they knew how to handle those situations. You know, at first we had a female leader who embraced the idea of starting these things, but then we had a changeover in leadership similar to what was on the video. And all of a sudden there was no longer an issue. So they were blind to the issue, and you know, there was a pushback similar to what Luke faces in Lincoln, to where they weren't even willing to recognize it. So somehow we need to compel two things. I'll say, and then I'll leave it at that. We need to compel people like myself to join this group and hear the perspective and embrace the change. And two, we need to give opportunities to all demographics, in this case, particularly women. If other departments aren't willing to do it, we need to do it regionally. We're going to do it here. Bellevue is a 110 person department, but we're going to embrace this for the Omaha area. We're 1.1 million. So we're going to lead a mentoring and leadership opportunities for women in the region outside of our own department, for all the departments, so that they can learn how to face these things. If they lack mentors in their own department, they lack these opportunities in their own department, they can learn through these collaborative opportunities. So I would urge everybody on the call, if you have the ability to lead those symposiums, if you will, to do so, and invite all women. If it's a women issue symposium, or all minorities, if you have that ability, do so. We have to spread the word and spread the opportunities for everyone. So I'll drop the mic on that.
Thank you for that, and thank you for all the work that you're doing. And Luke B, Lieutenant, we've heard about all the work that you're doing, the fights that you're having to pursue, and we definitely appreciate you. I want to thank all of you all. 2 hours out of a day is no small feat for you to share, you know, this time, this space with us. I want to thank you all for the work that you're doing. I also want to take this opportunity to publicly, you know, thank Mark 43. I came in with you know, as the impact director on Women in Blue already and part of 30 by 30. And so I said to Mark 43, we need money, we need support. And they stepped up right away. And one of the ways that they stepped up was to help me create a scholarship named the Cherie Briscoe Women Advancing Public Safety Scholarship. And I am happy and proud that they have supported me in this effort. This scholarship will go to women who are focusing on pushing forward public safety and the way that I have seen you do over these years. And I also am just appreciative because one of the things that I think we have to do is when we get into a position where we can reach back, reach across, reach up, whatever it is, that we use that position and that power to do that for each other. And so I wanted to announce that here. And thank you, the panelists, for, you know, all the work that you have done, for showing up for us today, for sharing your wisdom, for sharing your heart, for keeping it real, because these conversations are wastes of time if we are not actually sharing our hearts, our minds, and the ways to actually push forward. And it really does. We focused on gender. We focused on the intersectionality of gender and, you know, being Black, but it takes all of us. And so I really appreciate you showing up and supporting 30 by 30. One of the things that Mark 43 is also working on, amongst other things, and supporting it, is putting together maybe a call line, a 1-800, something like that, so that there is that support mechanism for folks to reach out and ask questions, because we know that there's already a lot of resources and energy that goes to just operating a police department, recruitment, violence, all those things. But we've got to give directed attention and resources to this work, and Mark 43 wants to be helpful for that. I also want to thank 30 by 30, you know, you all's brainchild, you know, Mo and Yvonne, and never dropping the torch and always pushing forward. Everybody on here that helps them to do that, Deidre for making the film, and also the Police Foundation. Thank you. It makes the difference. You know how police is. Police wait for a whole bunch of other people to say yes, and then other people, and then the rest of them do it. So thank you for those who said yes first, and for showing up and creating this platform. And if there's nothing else from anybody else, Mo, Jen, we're good. Then I will bid you adieu and thank you all.